When my husband's sister erased me from our family's luxury yacht trip, I almost let it slide until the crew greeted me as the owner in front of everyone, and her smile froze like ice under a summer sun. She'd spent months orchestrating my exclusion, spinning stories about family traditions and intimate gatherings, conveniently forgetting who actually bought that pristine 40-foot vessel with my own hard-earned money. But some truths have a way of surfacing at the most inconvenient moments, especially when you're live streaming your victory to 3,000 followers. My name is Camille Rivers, and I built my empire one organic face cream at a time. At 38, I've learned to recognize the subtle art of exclusion the way certain people can make you disappear without ever saying your name. This particular Tuesday morning in Savannah started like any other Earl Grey steaming in my favorite ceramic mug, the Georgia humidity already promising another sweltering day, and my phone buzzing with the usual cascade of business notifications. I was reviewing quarterly projections for my organic skincare line when a single Instagram story made my blood run cold. There was my husband's 15-year-old niece, practically vibrating with excitement as she panned her phone camera across what looked like the Hale family's formal dining room. "Can't wait for our annual yacht trip tomorrow," she squealed, her voice pitched with teenage enthusiasm. "The whole family's going to be there. It's going to be absolutely perfect." The whole family. I set my mug down carefully, the porcelain clicking against my granite countertop with the precision of a chess piece finding its square. Through the screen, I watched as the camera swept past familiar faces, Nathan's elderly mother adjusting her pearl necklace, his brother Mark rolling his eyes at his daughter's social media antics, and there center frame like she owned the goddamn world, Veronica Hale. My sister-in-law was orchestrating the scene with the practiced ease of a conductor, her perfectly highlighted hair catching the morning light as she gestured toward what appeared to be luggage staged by the front door. "Veronica's planned everything down to the smallest detail," the niece continued, and I could practically hear the reverence in her voice. "She says this year's trip is going to be extra special because it's just family, real family who understand what this tradition means. Real family." The phrase hit me like a slap across the face, delivered with the casual cruelty that only in-laws can master. I replayed the story 3 times, studying every frame, cataloging every face that appeared in that sweeping shot. Nathan's mother, his siblings, their children, even his cousin who lived in Portland and barely spoke to anyone. They were all there, all accounted for, all part of this precious family tradition. All except me. I scrolled back through Veronica's recent posts, my finger moving with surgical precision. There it was 2 weeks ago, a carefully curated photo of the family calendar, the yacht trip marked in cheerful purple ink. Last week, a throwback photo from previous years with a caption about maintaining sacred family bonds. 3 days ago, a shot of her consulting with what looked like a catering company, tagged with planning something special for the people who matter most. The people who matter most. I've been married to Nathan for 6 years. 6 years of Christmas mornings in their formal living room. 6 years of birthday dinners where I brought the wine and helped clear the dishes. 6 years of being introduced as Nathan's wife, while Veronica got her full name and accomplishments recited like a royal title. But apparently, 6 years wasn't enough to earn me a spot on the yacht that I purchased with money from my first major contract with Whole Foods. My phone buzzed. A text from Veronica herself, sent at exactly 9:47 a.m., timed with the precision of someone who'd been planning this conversation. "Morning. Sweetie Hope, you're having a lovely day. Just wanted to touch base about this week. I know you're always so busy with your little business ventures." Little business ventures. The company that had just crossed 8 figures in annual revenue was a little business venture. I felt terrible that we couldn't include everyone this year. The yacht just isn't big enough for extended family, and we really wanted to keep this one intimate. Family only. You know, I'm sure you understand. Maybe next year when we have more space, XOXO. Extended family. I read the message 4 times, each word settling into my consciousness like stones dropping into still water. The woman who had never earned a dollar of her own income in her 43 years of existence was calling me extended family while planning a trip on the yacht I owned. I opened my laptop and pulled up the original purchase documents from 3 years ago. Rivers Organic Skincare LLC had wired $2.7 million to Prestige Yacht Sales on a Tuesday afternoon in March. I remembered the exact moment because I'd been standing in my warehouse, surrounded by boxes of lavender moisturizer, when my accountant called to confirm the transfer had gone through. It was the first major purchase I'd made that had nothing to do with business expansion, nothing to do with practical necessity. It was pure joy, pure I've made it energy translated into 40 feet of pristine fiberglass and marine-grade luxury. But when the paperwork was filed, Nathan's name went on the registration alongside mine for tax purposes. Married filing jointly, shared assets, all the legal technicalities that married couples navigate. I'd thought nothing of it at the time. Now I was beginning to understand that had been my first mistake. I walked to my home office and pulled out the file folder labeled Yacht Documentation. Every receipt, every maintenance record, every insurance payment, all of it meticulously organized, all of it paid from accounts bearing my company's name. The yacht that Veronica was now calling family tradition had been my dream long before I'd even met her brother. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Nathan, calling from his office downtown. "Hey, babe." His voice carried that particular tone he used when he was about to deliver news he knew I wouldn't like. "So, about this weekend?" "You mean the family yacht trip I'm apparently not invited to?" Silence stretched between us like a taut wire. "Finally, Veronica said she texted you. She explained about the space constraints." "Space constraints." I kept my voice level, professional, on the yacht that sleeps 12 people comfortably. "Look, it's just easier this way. You know how she gets about family things. And honestly, you've said yourself that you find these trips exhausting." That was true. I had said that. After the last trip, when Veronica had spent 3 days explaining to every guest how the yacht represented generations of Hale family values, while I smiled and nodded and pretended not to notice that my contribution to its existence had been completely erased from the narrative. "I see," I said. "And you're comfortable with this arrangement." Another pause. "It's just one weekend. Cam. Pick your battles. You know, pick your battles." Spoken like a man who'd never had to fight for his place at his own table. After we hung up, I sat in my office chair for a long time, staring out at the Savannah skyline. The Spanish moss hung heavy from the oak trees lining my street, and somewhere in the distance, I could hear the low horn of a cargo ship making its way to port. This city had taught me something about survival, about building something beautiful from nothing, about the difference between belonging somewhere and taking up space. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a fresh legal pad. At the top of the first page, I wrote, "Documentation of Exclusion, Veronica Hale." It was time to start keeping better records. The confirmation arrived at 11:32 a.m. Delivered with the cold efficiency of automated systems that don't care about the human wreckage they document. "Dear Ms. Rivers," the email from Prestige Charter Services began. "This is to confirm the cancellation of the cabin reservation originally made under your name for the weekend of June 15th through 17th. As per the request submitted by Mrs. Veronica Hale on June 10th, your booking has been removed from the guest manifest. No refund is applicable as this cancellation falls under our family dispute policy. Thank you for choosing Prestige Charter Services." I read it twice before the full implications settled in. Veronica hadn't just excluded me from a family gathering, she'd actively canceled my reservation. She'd contacted the charter company, presented herself as someone with authority over my bookings, and erased me from the guest list like I was a clerical error that needed correcting. My hands moved with practiced efficiency, the muscle memory of a woman who'd learned never to react in anger, always to document first. Print, file, photograph. I opened the filing cabinet in my home office and pulled out the folder I'd started yesterday, Legal Contingency, Property Disputes. This email joined the growing collection of evidence. each piece a small but critical detail in what was becoming an undeniable pattern. I picked up my phone and dialed the charter company directly. Prestige Charter Services, this is Madison speaking. How can I help you today? This is Camille Rivers. I received an email about a booking cancellation I didn't authorize. Oh yes, Ms. Rivers. I handled that call personally on Monday. Mrs. Hale explained that there had been a family situation and you wouldn't be able to join the trip. She had all the booking details, so we processed the cancellation immediately. What exactly did she tell you? A pause. Madison's voice became more careful, the tone of someone who was beginning to sense they'd stepped into something complicated. She said that due to personal conflicts within the family, your presence would be disruptive. She mentioned that since the yacht is family property, she had authority to modify the guest list. Family property. I see. And you didn't think to confirm this cancellation with me directly. Well, she knew your booking reference number, your cabin preference, even your dietary restrictions. She seemed very familiar with your arrangements, so we assumed she was authorized to act on your behalf. Of course she knew those details. She'd been copying herself on every email exchange I'd had with the charter company for the past 2 months, inserting herself into the planning process with the persistence of a woman who considers other people's business her personal domain. After hanging up, I spent the next hour creating a comprehensive timeline. Every slight, every deliberate exclusion, every moment when Veronica had positioned herself as the yacht's de facto owner while I watched from the sidelines. The Thanksgiving when she'd given a speech about Hale family traditions while standing in front of photos of the yacht. The Christmas party where she'd told guests about our family's maritime heritage while I served drinks. The charity auction where she'd donated a family yacht weekend without consulting me. Each incident, viewed alone, could be dismissed as thoughtlessness or simple social awkwardness. Taken together, they formed a deliberate campaign to rewrite history, to transform my ownership into her inheritance. I opened my laptop and pulled up the bank records. Every payment to the marina, every insurance premium, every maintenance fee all paid from my business accounts. 3 years of documentation showing exactly who was responsible for keeping that yacht in pristine condition. I printed everything, organized it chronologically, and added it to my growing file. Then I called my attorney. Jennifer, it's Camille Rivers. I need to ask you about property rights in a marriage, specifically regarding assets purchased with separate business funds. Interesting question. Are we talking about the yacht Jennifer Marsh had handled the legal incorporation of my business 5 years ago? She knew exactly how carefully I'd maintained the separation between my personal assets and my marriage, a lesson learned from watching too many women lose everything in divorces because they'd failed to protect their premarital wealth. If I purchased an asset with funds from my business, but put my husband's name on the registration for tax purposes, who actually owns that asset? In Georgia, as long as you can prove the funds came from your separate property, which in this case would be your business, the asset remains your separate property regardless of whose name appears on the title. The key is documentation. Please tell me you kept records. Every transaction, every payment, every communication with the seller, it's all documented. Good. That's exactly what I'd expect from you. What's prompting this question? I told her about the cancellation, about Veronica's systematic campaign to establish herself as the yacht's owner, about the growing pattern of exclusion that was becoming impossible to ignore. She's testing boundaries, Jennifer said after I finished, seeing how far she can push before you push back. The question is, how far are you willing to let this go? After we hung up, I sat in my office reviewing the past 3 years with new eyes. Every time I'd chosen to stay quiet rather than correct Veronica's presumptions. Every time I'd smiled and nodded when she took credit for my purchases. Every time I'd told myself it wasn't worth the family drama to assert my actual role in creating the lifestyle she was now claiming as her birthright. I'd been so focused on keeping the peace that I'd accidentally seeded the war. My phone buzzed with a text from Nathan, leaving for Newport in an hour. Drive safe this weekend. Love you. Love you. as if his casual endorsement of my exclusion was just another ordinary marital compromise, as if 6 years of marriage had earned me nothing more than an afterthought and a kiss goodbye while his family sailed away on my yacht. I walked to my bedroom and opened my closet. In the back, still in its garment bag, hung the dress I'd planned to wear to the yacht's christening dinner, a celebration that had been quietly canceled when Veronica decided the yacht didn't need a formal introduction to society, that a family blessing would be more appropriate. I pulled the dress out and held it up to the light. Navy silk with clean lines, expensive but understated, the kind of dress that made statements without saying a word, the kind of dress that would photograph beautifully against the backdrop of a luxury yacht, the kind of dress an owner would wear to reclaim what was hers. I began to pack, the memory crystallized like sea glass smoothed by years of erosion, sharp edges worn away until only the essential truth remained. March 15th. 3 years ago. I was standing in my warehouse at 6:15 in the morning, surrounded by towers of shipping boxes containing my latest lavender and chamomile face cream launch. The morning light filtered through the industrial windows, catching the dust motes that danced above pallets of products that represented 18 months of development, testing, and prayer. My phone rang as I was checking inventory counts against the shipping manifest for our first major Whole Foods distribution. Ms. Rivers, this is David from Coastal Bank. I'm calling to confirm the wire transfer for $2.7 million to Prestige Yacht Sales. Should we proceed? I remember looking around at my empire, my employees arriving with coffee and determination, my products ready to launch into 300 stores nationwide, my accountant waving a profit projection that showed we'd officially crossed into 8-figure territory. For the first time in my adult life, I had enough money to buy something purely because I wanted it, not because it would grow my business or secure my future. Yes, I'd said, watching the sunrise paint my warehouse walls gold. Proceed with the transfer. That yacht wasn't a family heirloom or an inherited symbol of maritime tradition. It was a declaration of independence purchased with money I'd earned by getting up at 5 a.m. every day for 4 years, by sleeping on the warehouse floor during product launches, by cold calling buyers until my voice was hoarse and my pride was in tatters. Every dollar that bought that yacht had my fingerprints on it, my sweat equity baked into its foundation. But somewhere between the purchase and the present, that truth had been quietly erased. I pulled the original sales contract from my filing cabinet, running my fingers over the signatures that made it official. The yacht had been sold to Rivers Organic Skincare, LLC, with myself listed as the primary contact and decision-maker. Nathan's name appeared nowhere on the purchase documents that came later, when my accountant suggested adding him to the registration for tax advantages related to married filing status. It's purely administrative, she'd assured me. Joint ownership on paper, but since the purchase funds came entirely from your business, you maintain complete control. At the time, it had seemed like smart financial planning. Nathan and I were newlyweds, blissfully naive about how money and marriage could intersect in unexpected ways. I'd trusted that legal technicalities wouldn't override the fundamental truth of ownership. I'd believed that everyone would remember who actually bought the yacht, who actually earned the right to own it. I'd been catastrophically wrong. The first sign had been subtle. Nathan's mother, during our second year of marriage, had casually mentioned the family yacht in conversation with her garden club friends. When I'd gently corrected her, actually, it's Camille's yacht, she'd given me that particular smile that wealthy women perfect in finishing school. The one that suggests you've committed a social faux pas by mentioning something as vulgar as actual ownership. Of course, dear, she'd said. But it's family now, isn't it? Family now. As if marriage meant the automatic dissolution of individual achievement. As if saying I do had somehow transferred my purchase to the collective Hale estate. Veronica had been more direct in her appropriation. During the yacht's first summer, she'd begun referring to it as our family tradition in her social media posts. She'd started planning the guest lists for weekend trips without consulting me, assuming that her status as Nathan's sister gave her executive authority over my property. When I'd objected, She'd looked genuinely confused. But Camille, family assets are family assets. That's how these things work in families like ours. Families like ours. Translation: families with old money, inherited wealth, and the kind of generational thinking that assumes all boats rise with the tide. She couldn't conceive of a world where someone, especially a woman who'd married into the family, could purchase a yacht independently and maintain individual ownership. In her worldview, my achievement automatically became their inheritance. The pattern had accelerated from there. Veronica had commissioned a professional photographer to take family portraits aboard the yacht, creating visual evidence of Hale ownership that she'd distributed through Christmas cards and social media. She'd begun hosting charity events that she described as family philanthropy, using my yacht as the venue while accepting donations and accolades for the Hale family's generous spirit. She'd even had custom life preservers made with Hale family vessel embroidered in gold thread. Each appropriation had felt like a small theft, but challenging them had seemed petty. Who corrects a Christmas card caption? Who objects to charity fundraising? Who makes a scene over life preserver embroidery? I'd chosen peace over principle so many times that principle had gradually disappeared from the equation. But this weekend's exclusion wasn't about embroidery or photo captions. This was about fundamental recognition of ownership, about the right to exist in spaces I'd created and paid for. Veronica wasn't just stealing credit anymore, she was erasing my existence entirely. I opened my laptop and navigated to the marina's account portal. Every monthly slip fee, every maintenance charge, every upgrade and repair, all paid from my business accounts, all documented with receipts and invoices that bore my company's name. 3 years of financial records that told the unambiguous story of who actually kept that yacht operational. Then I opened the insurance policy documents. The yacht was covered under a premium policy that cost $18,000 annually, paid quarterly through automatic deductions from my business banking account. The policy listed me as the primary beneficiary and decision maker, with Nathan added as an authorized user for emergency situations. The phone records were even more revealing. Every conversation with the marina staff, every booking with the charter services, every coordination call with maintenance crews, all initiated from my phone, all handled by me personally. Veronica might have inserted herself into recent planning conversations, but the historical record showed exactly who had been managing this asset since its purchase. I printed everything: purchase contracts, bank transfers, insurance policies, maintenance records, phone logs, email exchanges. The stack of papers grew to nearly 3 inches thick, each page a small piece of evidence that, taken together, formed an unshakable foundation of actual ownership. At the bottom of the pile, I found the original yacht listing that had caught my attention 3 years ago. The broker's description was effusive: a pristine vessel perfect for entertaining, offering luxury appointments and state-of-the-art navigation systems. The ideal yacht for someone who appreciates both performance and elegance. Someone who appreciates both performance and elegance. Someone who had earned the right to own such things through their own efforts, their own vision, their own relentless pursuit of success. Someone like me, not someone like Veronica, who had never earned a dollar of her own income, who had never risked anything beyond her manicure, who had never stayed awake at night wondering if a business decision would make or break her future. I closed the laptop and walked to my bedroom window. Outside, Savannah stretched toward the horizon, all moss-draped elegance and carefully preserved history. This city understood something about ownership, about the difference between inherited privilege and earned success. It had taught me that some things were worth fighting for, that some battles defined who you were more than the peace they might disrupt. My phone buzzed with a notification. Veronica had posted another Instagram story, this one showing the family loading luggage into luxury SUVs for the drive to Newport. The caption read, "Ready for our annual family tradition aboard the family yacht. So grateful for the legacy that brings us together." Our annual family tradition. The family yacht. The legacy that brings us together. Every word was a calculated lie, every phrase a small act of theft. I looked at the stack of documentation on my desk. 3 years of proof that the woman claiming ownership had contributed exactly nothing to the yacht's existence. Then I looked at the navy dress hanging in my closet, waiting for its moment to make a statement. It was time to reclaim my legacy. I spent Friday evening in my home office like a general preparing for battle, surrounded by documents that would serve as my artillery. The 3-inch stack of ownership proof sat centered on my mahogany desk, each page organized with the precision of someone who understood that truth required evidence, and evidence required presentation. The original purchase agreement came first, Rivers Organic Skincare LLC to Prestige Yacht Sales, dated March 15th, complete with my signature and the wire transfer confirmation for $2.7 million. Behind that, the insurance documents naming me as primary beneficiary. Then the maintenance records, marina fees, upgrade receipts, all paid from my business accounts over 3 years. Finally, the email chains with charter services, equipment suppliers, and dockmasters, every conversation initiated by me, every decision made with my authority. I photographed each document with my phone, uploading them to a secure cloud folder labeled Legal Documentation, Yacht Ownership. If this confrontation was going to happen in front of witnesses, I wanted backup copies accessible from anywhere. At 9:45 p.m., I called the marina directly. Newport Harbor Marina. This is Marcus on the night desk. This is Camille Rivers, owner of Slip 47. I need to confirm that my yacht will be ready for my arrival tomorrow afternoon. A pause as he consulted his computer. Ms. Rivers, I show the reservation is under the Hale family name for this weekend. Are you part of that group? Marcus, who pays the monthly slip fees for that yacht. That would be Rivers Organic Skincare, ma'am. And who's listed as the primary contact for all maintenance and operational decisions? You are Ms. Rivers. Then you understand who the actual owner is, regardless of whatever reservation names might be showing in your system. Yes, ma'am, absolutely. The yacht will be ready for your arrival. I hung up feeling the first surge of real power I'd experienced in months. The staff knew who owned what they'd been dealing with my payments and my instructions for 3 years. Veronica could claim authority all she wanted, but money talked louder than family titles. Next, I pulled up the guest management system for the yacht's onboard services. As the owner, I had administrative access to all reservation systems, catering orders, and activity bookings. Veronica had been busy. She'd scheduled a welcome cocktail reception for Saturday evening, complete with professional photography and what appeared to be a live stream setup for her social media followers. A live stream. She was planning to broadcast her moment of triumph to thousands of followers, cementing her narrative about family traditions and generational wealth for public consumption. The yacht I'd purchased with my own money would become the backdrop for her performance of inherited privilege. Perfect. I opened a new browser tab and researched Newport's harbor regulations. Rhode Island had specific protocols for yacht ownership disputes, and I memorized every relevant statute. If Veronica wanted to play the authority card, she'd discover that actual legal ownership trumped family presumptions every time. My phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. Just arrived at the hotel. Long drive, but we're all here safe. Veronica's so excited about tomorrow, she's been planning this for months. While systematically excluding me from events on my own property. I didn't respond. Saturday morning. I woke at 5:30 a.m. and went through my usual routine with military precision. Coffee, email review, financial reports for my business. I wanted to be grounded in my own success before walking into the theater of Veronica's delusions. At 8 a.m., I called my attorney. Jennifer, it's Camille. I'm driving to Newport this morning to reclaim my yacht. I want to make sure I'm protected legally if this escalates. You have every right to access your own property. Just document everything: photos, witness statements, any attempts to physically prevent your access. And Camille, don't let them gaslight you into believing their narrative. You own that yacht. Period. I packed my car with surgical precision. The navy dress went in first, still in its garment bag, along with matching accessories that would photograph beautifully against a nautical backdrop. Then, my laptop, the printed documentation, backup phone chargers, and a small overnight bag in case this confrontation extended beyond a single afternoon. The drive to Newport took 4 hours and 37 minutes. I used the time to mentally rehearse the conversation, anticipating Veronica's likely responses and preparing my counter-arguments. She'd probably claim family authority, appeal to Nathan's loyalties, maybe even suggest that challenging her was somehow ungrateful or destructive to family harmony. None of that would matter once the marina staff confirmed my ownership in front of witnesses. I arrived at Newport Harbor at 2:15 p.m., the summer sun glinting off the water like scattered diamonds. The marina was bustling with weekend activity, wealthy families loading coolers and sunscreen onto gleaming vessels, crew members preparing yachts for afternoon excursions. The particular energy of people who had enough money to turn Saturday into an extended vacation. I parked in the visitor lot and walked toward the marina office, my heels clicking against the dock planks with the measured pace of someone who belonged here. Through the office windows, I could see my yacht in its slip, 40 feet of pristine white fiberglass and polished chrome. It looked exactly as I'd left it after the last maintenance check, immaculate, expensive, and unquestionably mine. But something was different. Colorful banners had been strung between the masts, and I could see people moving around on deck, setting up what looked like a party space. Veronica's welcome reception was already in progress, transforming my yacht into the stage for her performance. I checked my reflection in the marina office window. Hair perfect, makeup flawless, dress fitted exactly right. I looked like someone who owned a yacht, someone who had earned the right to be here, someone who wouldn't be intimidated by family politics or social manipulation. I looked like Camille Rivers, successful businesswoman and actual yacht owner. Time to remind everyone else of that fact. I walked through the marina office, nodding to Marcus at the front desk. He recognized me immediately and buzzed me through to the dock access without question. The sound of voices and laughter grew louder as I approached Slip 47, where my yacht waited like a queen holding court. Veronica was visible on the upper deck, gesturing animatedly to a small crowd of family members and what appeared to be professional photographers. She was wearing white linen and gold jewelry, styled to look like she'd stepped off the pages of Town and Country magazine. Her phone was mounted on a tripod, clearly set up for the live stream she'd been planning. She hadn't seen me yet. I paused at the base of the gangplank, feeling the weight of the moment settle around me like armor. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd achieved, everything I'd allowed to be taken from me through my own desire to keep the peace, it all came down to this. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and stepped onto my yacht. "Good afternoon, everyone," I called out, my voice carrying across the deck with the clear authority of someone who had every right to be there. "I hope you're all enjoying yourselves aboard my yacht." The reaction was immediate and electric. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Faces turned toward me with expressions ranging from confusion to shock. Veronica's perfectly curated smile faltered for just a moment before snapping back into place, but I caught the flash of panic in her eyes. Her live stream was recording everything. The silence that followed my announcement stretched like a taut wire, broken only by the gentle lapping of water against the yacht's hull and the distant sound of seagulls circling overhead. 14 pairs of eyes stared at me with varying degrees of confusion, shock, and in Nathan's case, pure dread. Veronica recovered first, her social training kicking in with the efficiency of muscle memory. Her smile snapped back into place, bright and sharp as a blade. "Camille, what a wonderful surprise. We didn't expect you to change your mind about joining us." The gaslighting was immediate and expertly delivered. In one sentence, she'd reframed my arrival as a last-minute decision rather than the reclaiming of my own property. She'd positioned herself as the gracious hostess welcoming an unexpected guest, rather than someone who had actively excluded me from my own yacht. "I didn't change my mind about anything," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the deck. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Nathan's mother, Eleanor, stepped forward with the imperious bearing of someone accustomed to managing social crises through sheer force of propriety. "Dear, perhaps there's been some confusion about the arrangements. Veronica has worked so hard to coordinate this family gathering." "There's no confusion." I moved further onto the deck, noting how the family instinctively parted to create space around me. Some conflicts require physical territory, and I was claiming mine. "I'm standing on my yacht, which I purchased 3 years ago with funds from my business." The live stream camera continued recording, its red light blinking steadily as it captured every word. Veronica's followers were watching this unfold in real time, witnessing the careful narrative she'd constructed beginning to crack. Nathan finally found his voice. "Cam, can we talk about this privately? Maybe we should—" "No." I cut him off. "We've had 3 years of private conversations that led to me being excluded from my own property. This conversation happens here, now, with witnesses." Veronica's composure was beginning to fray at the edges. "Camille, you're being very dramatic. This is a family yacht, and we're having a family gathering. I don't understand why you're making such a scene." "Family yacht." I repeated the words slowly, letting them hang in the air. "That's interesting phrasing. Tell me, Veronica, which member of your family purchased this yacht?" "Well, Nathan's name is on the registration. Nathan's name was added for tax purposes after I bought it. Would you like to see the purchase agreement?" I pulled out my phone and opened the photos I'd taken of the documentation. Rivers Organic Skincare LLC purchased this yacht from Prestige Yacht Sales on March 15th, 3 years ago. Purchase price $2.7 million. Purchaser signature mine. Payment method wire transfer from my business account. The crowd had gone completely silent now. Even the professional photographer had lowered his camera, sensing that this moment required witnessing rather than documentation. Veronica's voice took on a strained quality. "Family assets become shared assets. That's how marriage works. Actually, in Georgia, assets purchased with separate business funds remain separate property regardless of marriage." "Would you like to call my attorney to confirm that?" Nathan's brother Mark cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Maybe we should all just calm down and enjoy the afternoon. This is supposed to be a celebration." "A celebration of what exactly?" I asked. "Veronica's success in excluding me from property. I own her skill at rewriting history to suit her narrative." That's when Captain Rodriguez appeared from the yacht's pilot house, drawn by the commotion on deck. He was the marina's senior staff member, someone who'd worked with me directly on maintenance and operational issues for 3 years. "Ms. Rivers," he said, his voice carrying the automatic respect of someone addressing a valued client. "We weren't expecting you today. Should I prepare the yacht for departure?" The impact was immediate and devastating to Veronica's position. Here was a uniformed professional treating me as the clear authority figure, asking for my instructions while the entire family watched. "Not just yet, Captain Rodriguez," I replied. "We're in the middle of clarifying some ownership questions." Veronica's face had gone pale beneath her carefully applied makeup. "There must be some mistake. The reservation was made under the Hale family name." "Yes, ma'am," Captain Rodriguez said politely. "But Ms. Rivers is the yacht's owner. She's listed as our primary contact for all operational decisions. The family booking was processed as her guests." Her guests. The words hit like a physical blow. Every person on this deck, Nathan's mother, his siblings, their children, the photographers, the catering staff, all of them were here as my guests, whether they realized it or not. Nathan stepped forward, his face flushed with embarrassment. "Camille, please, let's not do this in front of everyone." "Do what acknowledge reality state facts." I turned to address the group. "For 3 years, I've watched my ownership of this yacht be gradually erased. I've been patient when family Christmas cards featured photos taken aboard my yacht with captions about Hale family traditions. I've stayed quiet when charity auctions included weekends on the family yacht without my knowledge or consent. I've smiled and nodded when my purchase was reframed as everyone's inheritance." Veronica's live stream was still running. her followers witnessing the complete collapse of her carefully curated narrative. The comments section was probably exploding with questions and reactions, but she seemed frozen, unable to stop the recording or address what was happening. But this weekend, I continued, when I was actively excluded from my own property, when my reservation was canceled without my consent, when I was told there wasn't space for extended family on the yacht I purchased, that's where patience ends and ownership begins. Eleanor tried one more time to regain control of the situation. This is very unseemly, dear. Family disputes should be handled privately. Family disputes? I turned to face her directly. This isn't a family dispute. This is a property rights issue, and it stops today. The afternoon sun caught the water around us, creating a shimmer of light that made the whole scene feel surreal. Here we were, surrounded by the trappings of wealth and leisure, while engaging in a fundamental battle about truth, ownership, and the right to exist in spaces you've created. Veronica finally reached for her phone, ending the live stream with shaking fingers, but it was too late. The damage was done. The truth was out, and there were too many witnesses to pretend this conversation had never happened. I think, I said, my voice calm and clear, it's time for everyone to understand exactly who owns what around here. The real confrontation was just beginning. By 7:30 p.m., the yacht's main salon had been transformed into an elegant dining space, complete with crystal stemware and ivory linens that caught the golden light filtering through the panoramic windows. The catering staff moved with practiced efficiency, setting places for what Veronica had clearly envisioned as her moment of triumph, a formal dinner where she could hold court as the gracious hostess of the family yacht. I had changed into the navy dress, the one that had been waiting 3 years for this exact moment. It fit like armor disguised as silk, every line calculated to project confidence and ownership. I entered the salon precisely as the dinner bell chimed, timing my arrival for maximum impact. The family had arranged themselves around the mahogany dining table with the careful choreography of people accustomed to formal occasions. Veronica sat at the head position, the spot traditionally reserved for the host, while Nathan occupied the seat to her right. She'd even arranged place cards, a small detail that demonstrated just how thoroughly she'd planned this performance of authority. There was no place card for me. "Oh," Veronica said as I entered, her voice carrying just the right note of surprised concern. "Camille, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize you'd be staying for dinner. Let me ask the staff to set an additional place." Additional place. As if I were an unexpected guest requiring accommodation rather than the owner of the yacht they were dining upon. "That won't be necessary," I said, moving to the head of the table where Veronica sat. "I believe you're in my seat." The silence that followed was deafening. Every conversation ceased. Every fork paused halfway to waiting mouths. Nathan's face had gone pale, his eyes darting between his wife and his sister with the desperate calculation of a man trying to determine which direction the explosion would come from. Veronica's laugh was crystalline and sharp. "Oh, Camille. There aren't assigned seats at family dinners. Please, sit anywhere you'd like." "Actually," I said, pulling out my phone and opening the photos I'd taken of the yacht's original documentation, "there are assigned seats when the owner of the yacht decides there are assigned seats." I held up the screen showing the purchase agreement, the image clear and undeniable even in the salon's ambient lighting. "This is the contract I signed when I purchased this yacht 3 years ago. My signature, my company's wire transfer, my down payment of $500,000 followed by the remaining $2.2 million. Nathan's mother Eleanor set down her wine glass with the precise control of someone who was beginning to understand that the evening had taken an irrevocable turn. "Camille, dear, surely we can discuss business matters after dinner." "Business matters," I repeated. "This isn't business, Eleanor. This is ownership. And I'm tired of watching my ownership be erased by people who contributed nothing to its existence." Veronica stood slowly, her movements deliberate and controlled. "Everyone, please don't let this unpleasantness spoil our lovely evening. Family disagreements happen, but we shouldn't let them. Family disagreements. I cut her off, my voice rising just enough to ensure every person in the salon could hear me clearly. Let me tell you about family disagreements. Veronica. A family disagreement is arguing about where to spend Christmas. A family disagreement is debating which movie to watch on vacation. What you've done isn't a family disagreement, it's systematic theft of credit and deliberate exclusion from property I own. I pulled out the printed stack of documentation I'd brought from home, setting it on the dining table with a sound that seemed to echo through the suddenly airless room. Marina fees paid by Rivers Organic Skincare for 36 consecutive months. Insurance premiums totaling $54,000, all paid from my business accounts. Maintenance records showing every repair, every upgrade, every inspection, all authorized and paid for by me. Nathan finally found his voice. Cam, please. Everyone knows you bought the yacht. No one's questioning that. Aren't they? I turned to address the table. Mark, what did you tell your golf partners about this yacht last month? Nathan's brother shifted uncomfortably in his seat, suddenly fascinated by his salad course. I don't remember exactly what I said. You said it was the family yacht that's been in the Hale family for years. Eleanor, what did you write in your Christmas newsletter about our family traditions? Eleanor's composure cracked slightly. I may have mentioned our lovely family gatherings. You wrote about generations of Hale maritime heritage and our treasured family vessel. Veronica, would you like to tell everyone what you said during your speech at the Coastal Conservation Gala? Veronica's face had gone rigid, her carefully applied makeup unable to hide the flush of anger and embarrassment creeping up her neck. I spoke about family values and philanthropy. You spoke about how the Hale family yacht represents our commitment to coastal preservation and our family's deep connection to maritime tradition. You accepted a $5,000 donation made specifically because the donor wanted to support families like yours who understand the responsibility of inherited wealth. The words hung in the air like accusations, each one a small piece of evidence in the larger case I was building. Around the table, family members exchanged glances, beginning to understand that they'd been complicit in a 3-year campaign of historical revision. But here's my favorite, I continued, pulling out my phone again and opening a saved email. This is from the conversation you had with my attorney's office 2 months ago. Veronica, you called asking about procedures for transferring family assets to prevent them from being claimed by non-blood relatives in the event of a divorce. Nathan's fork clattered against his plate. You did what Veronica's composure finally shattered completely. That was a hypothetical inquiry I was simply trying to understand. You were trying to figure out how to steal my yacht legally. I said it calmly, matter-of-factly, like I was discussing the weather. You've spent 3 years creating a narrative where this yacht somehow belongs to the Hale family despite being purchased entirely with my money, and now you're exploring legal options to make that narrative reality. The dining salon had become a courtroom, with me as both prosecutor and plaintiff presenting evidence to a jury of horrified family members. The catering staff had retreated to the galley, sensing that this was no longer a celebration, but a reckoning. Furthermore, I continued, you've been systematically excluding me from events on my own property while simultaneously using those events to reinforce your false narrative of ownership. The Christmas party where you told donors about our family's maritime heritage, I wasn't invited to that either. The charity auction where you donated a family yacht weekend, not only was I not consulted, I was actively uninformed until after the fact. Eleanor made one last attempt to restore order through sheer force of social convention. This is hardly the time or place for such accusations. Camille. Actually, Eleanor, this is exactly the time and place. We're sitting in the main salon of my yacht, during a dinner I wasn't invited to, while surrounded by people who've spent 3 years pretending I don't exist as an owner, if not now, when Veronica finally exploded. You're so obsessed with ownership. Everything is always about money with you. This family means more than your business transactions and your receipts and your my what? I asked quietly. My hard work, my success, my right to own things I've earned. The question hit like a slap. Around the table, I could see the uncomfortable recognition dawning. This wasn't just about a yacht. This was about the fundamental question of whether a woman who married into a family had the right to maintain her individual achievements, or whether marriage meant the automatic absorption of her assets into the collective family wealth. "You want to talk about family," I said, my voice carrying to every corner of the salon. "Let me tell you what family looks like. Family doesn't erase your contributions. Family doesn't steal credit for your achievements. Family doesn't exclude you from property you own while celebrating their own generosity with your assets." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the sound of water against the hull seemed muted, as if the yacht itself was holding its breath. "So here's what's going to happen," I said, straightening to my full height and looking directly at Veronica. "You're going to stop referring to this as a family yacht. You're going to stop planning events here without my explicit consent. You're going to stop accepting donations and accolades for Hale family maritime tradition. And you're never, ever going to exclude me from my own property again." Veronica's mouth opened and closed soundlessly, her carefully constructed world collapsing around her like a house of cards in a hurricane. "Because if you do," I continued, "I'll sell this yacht tomorrow and use the proceeds to buy something even better. Something with no Hale family names on any documentation whatsoever." The threat landed with surgical precision. The yacht wasn't just Veronica's stolen symbol of status, it was the family's primary venue for the social gatherings that reinforced their position in Newport society. Without it, their carefully curated image of maritime wealth would crumble. I had just reminded them who actually held all the power, and judging by the looks of stunned realization around the table, the message had been received loud and clear. The aftermath of my ultimatum hung in the salon air like smoke after an explosion. For 30 seconds, nobody moved. Veronica remained frozen at what she'd assumed was the head of the table, her perfectly manicured hands gripping her napkin so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Around the table, family members exchanged the kind of meaningful glances that happen when people realize they've been witnesses to something that will be discussed for years to come. Then the collapse began. Nathan's teenage niece, the same girl whose Instagram story had first alerted me to my exclusion, cleared her throat with the particular awkwardness of youth confronting adult hypocrisy. "Aunt Veronica," she said, her voice small but carrying clearly in the silence. "If Aunt Camille owns the yacht, why did you tell everyone it was ours?" The question hit like a precision strike. Out of the mouths of babes came the fundamental inquiry that none of the adults had been willing to voice. Why had they all participated in this elaborate fiction? Veronica's voice, when she finally found it, was barely above a whisper. "It's complicated, sweetheart. Adult relationships are—" "No," I said firmly. "It's not complicated at all. Your Aunt Veronica decided that my achievement should become her inheritance, and all of you went along with it because it was easier than challenging her narrative." Nathan's brother Mark set down his wineglass with the careful precision of someone trying to maintain dignity while his world shifted beneath him. "Camille, I think we've all gotten carried away here. Maybe we should—" "Should what?" I interrupted. "Should continue pretending. Should go back to the comfortable lie where Veronica gets credit for wealth she never earned while I smile and stay quiet." Eleanor, Nathan's mother, made one final attempt to restore the social order through sheer force of maternal authority. "Young lady, I don't appreciate your tone. We are family, and family requires compromise and understanding." "Understanding," I repeated the word slowly, tasting its bitter irony. "Let me tell you what I understand. Eleanor, I understand that for 3 years. I've watched my money pay for events I wasn't invited to. I understand that my business success has been rewritten as your family's generational wealth. I understand that you've been so comfortable with this arrangement that you forgot I might actually object to being erased from my own achievements." The dining salon had become a theater of reckoning, and the performance was far from over. Nathan finally stood, his face flushed with a combination of embarrassment and anger that I couldn't quite parse. "Enough," he said. This is my family, Camille. These are the people who raised me, who've supported us, who've stolen credit for my work while excluding me from my own property. I finished. Nathan, I need you to understand something. Your loyalty to them has enabled this. Every time you stayed quiet when Veronica called this the family yacht, every time you let your mother include yacht photos in Christmas newsletters about Hale family traditions, every time you chose peace over truth, you helped steal pieces of my identity. The words hit him like physical blows. I could see the recognition dawning in his eyes, the uncomfortable realization that his desire to avoid family conflict had made him complicit in something much larger and more damaging than he'd ever intended. But here's what I really understand, I continued, my voice gaining strength as I spoke. I understand that you never saw me as an equal partner in this marriage. You saw me as someone who should be grateful to be included in your family's existing narrative, even if that meant erasing my own story. Nathan's face went pale. That's not fair. I love you. I've always... Love, I laughed, and the sound was sharp enough to cut glass. Nathan, you've spent this entire weekend sailing away on my yacht while I was actively excluded from the trip. If that's your definition of love, I think we need to have a much longer conversation about what marriage actually means. Around the table, the family members were beginning to fracture into smaller conversations, whispered exchanges that suggested loyalties were being reconsidered in real time. Nathan's cousin, who'd driven down from Portland specifically for this trip, was staring at Veronica with the kind of expression reserved for people who've just discovered they've been lied to. But Veronica herself seemed to be entering some kind of psychological free fall. Her carefully constructed persona, the gracious hostess, the keeper of family traditions, the wise older sister managing family assets, had been revealed as an elaborate performance built on lies and theft. You don't understand, she said suddenly, her voice rising with desperation. This family has traditions. We have a way of doing things. When you married Nathan, you became part of something larger than yourself. Larger than myself, I repeated. You mean I became smaller than myself? I became so small that my contributions could be ignored, my ownership could be erased, and my presence could be eliminated entirely. The truth of it settled over the salon like a heavy blanket. This wasn't just about a yacht. This was about the systematic diminishment of a woman's individual identity within the institution of marriage. It was about the assumption that saying "I do" meant signing away the right to own things independently, to receive credit for personal achievements, to exist as anything other than an appendage to the family you'd married into. Eleanor tried one more time, her voice taking on the imperious tone of someone accustomed to having her pronouncements accepted without question. Camille, you're being extremely selfish. This yacht has brought the family together for 3 years. It's created memories, strengthened bonds. With my money, I said quietly. It's created memories and strengthened bonds with my money, while I was systematically excluded from the very events that were supposedly bringing everyone together. The simple statement hung in the air like an indictment, because that's what it was. An indictment of every person at that table who had benefited from my generosity while accepting my erasure, who had enjoyed the luxury I provided while agreeing that I didn't deserve to be present for it. Nathan's teenage niece spoke up again, her young voice cutting through the adult rationalizations with devastating clarity. But that's really mean, isn't it? Like, if Aunt Camille paid for everything, why wouldn't she be invited to use her own stuff? From the mouths of babes. The question was so simple, so fundamentally logical, that it exposed the elaborate house of cards that the adults had constructed to justify their behavior. Veronica's composure finally cracked completely. It's not that simple. So, she snapped, her voice rising to a near shout. She doesn't understand family loyalty. She doesn't understand tradition. She comes from nothing, and she thinks money gives her the right to what? I asked softly. To exist, to be acknowledged, to own things I've purchased with money I've earned. The mask had slipped completely now. Veronica's true feelings were spilling out the resentment of someone who had never achieved anything independently, being forced to acknowledge someone who had built an empire from scratch. The fury of inherited privilege confronting earned success. "She comes from nothing," I repeated Veronica's words slowly. "You're right. I do come from nothing. I built my company from nothing. I earned every dollar that bought this yacht from nothing." And that terrifies you, doesn't it? Because if someone from nothing can achieve this much, what does that say about someone who was handed everything and accomplished nothing? The silence that followed was deafening. Around the table, I could see the uncomfortable recognition in every face, the acknowledgement that this conflict wasn't really about yacht ownership or family traditions. It was about the fundamental question of worth, of who deserved to be seen and acknowledged and credited for their achievements. Nathan was staring at his sister with an expression I'd never seen before, a mixture of shock and disappointment that suggested he was finally seeing Veronica clearly for the first time in his life. "I think," he said slowly, his voice barely audible, "we owe Camille an apology. All of us." But I was already standing, already moving toward the salon door. The moment of truth had arrived and passed. The confrontation had reached its natural conclusion, and there was nothing left to be said. "Keep your apologies," I said, not turning around. "I don't need your acknowledgement anymore. I just needed you to know that I know exactly what you all did." The real victory wasn't in their apologies. It was in the knowledge that they would never be able to pretend again. The comfortable fiction was dead, and there was no resurrecting it. I walked out of the salon and into the gathering dusk, leaving behind the wreckage of 3 years' worth of lies. The yacht's upper deck was bathed in the soft glow of harbor lights as I stepped out of the salon and into the cool evening air. Behind me, I could hear the muffled sounds of urgent conversation, the kind of whispered exchanges that happen when people are trying to process a fundamental shift in their understanding of reality. I walked to the bow railing, my heels clicking against the polished deck with the measured pace of someone who had finally reclaimed their rightful place. The harbor stretched out before me, dotted with the lights of other yachts, each one representing someone else's dream made manifest through hard work and determination. The irony wasn't lost on me. For 3 years, I'd been fighting to be seen on my own yacht, struggling to maintain my identity in the face of systematic erasure. Now, standing here alone while the family that had tried to erase me sat inside dealing with the wreckage of their comfortable fiction, I felt more powerful than I ever had, surrounded by their acknowledgement. The door to the salon opened behind me, and I heard footsteps approaching. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. I knew it would be Nathan, finally ready for the conversation we should have had 3 years ago. "Camille." His voice was quiet, uncertain in a way I'd never heard before. "I'm sorry." "I'm so incredibly sorry." "For what, specifically?" I asked, my eyes still fixed on the horizon. "For enabling your sister's theft of my achievements, for choosing family harmony over my dignity, for allowing me to be excluded from my own property. I want to make sure we're both clear about what you're apologizing for." He moved to stand beside me at the railing, close enough that I could feel the tension radiating from him. All of it. Everything. I didn't realize how bad it had gotten. "You didn't realize?" I repeated. "Nathan, your sister called my attorney's office asking about legal ways to steal my yacht. She's been systematically rewriting the history of this purchase for 3 years. She excluded me from a weekend on my own property. What part of that seemed subtle to you?" The question hung between us like a challenge. In the distance, a foghorn sounded, its deep note carrying across the water like a warning to ships that had lost their way. "I thought you didn't care that much about the credit," he said finally. "You always seemed so above the family politics, so focused on your business. I thought the yacht was just an asset to you. Just an asset." I turned to look at him then, studying the man I'd married 6 years ago. trying to reconcile the person I'd fallen in love with and the person who could watch his wife be systematically diminished without intervention. Nathan, this yacht represents the first time in my life I had enough money to buy something purely because I wanted it. It's the symbol of everything I've achieved, everything I've overcome. And you thought I wouldn't care if that was stolen from me. His face crumpled with the weight of understanding. I failed you. Completely. Yes, I said simply. You did. The honesty of it seemed to hit him like a physical blow. What can I do? How can I fix this? I considered the question, watching the lights of Newport Harbor twinkle like fallen stars. I don't know that you can. Nathan, this isn't just about tonight, or this weekend, or even Veronica's behavior. This is about the fundamental question of whether you see me as an equal partner in this marriage or as someone who should be grateful to be included in your family's existing narrative. You're my equal. Of course you're my equal. Then why did you let them treat me like I wasn't? The question silenced him. Because we both knew the answer, it had been easier to let me be diminished than to challenge his family's assumptions. Easier to maintain peace than to fight for truth. Easier to let his sister steal credit for my achievements than to have difficult conversations about ownership and recognition. Behind us, the salon door opened again. This time it was Veronica. Her earlier composure completely shattered. Her makeup was smudged, her perfectly styled hair disheveled, and she looked like someone who had just watched their entire worldview collapse in real time. "Camille," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I need to talk to you." I didn't turn around. "I think you've said enough for one evening. Veronica, please, I didn't realize how it looked from your perspective." Now I did turn, studying the woman who had spent 3 years systematically erasing my contributions while building her own social status on the foundation of my success. How it looked from my perspective, Veronica. You tried to steal my yacht. Not metaphorically, not socially. You literally contacted legal professionals about transferring ownership away from me. How exactly did you think that would look from my perspective? She flinched as if I'd struck her. I was scared. I was scared that if something happened to Nathan, if you two got divorced, we'd lose access to something that had become so important to our family traditions. So you decided to steal it preemptively. I decided to protect it. The rationalization was breathtaking in its audacity. Even now, even after being caught and confronted with undeniable evidence, she was still trying to reframe theft as protection, erasure as preservation. Protect it from whom? I asked. From the person who actually bought it, from the woman who has paid every maintenance fee, every insurance premium, every marina charge for 3 years. You weren't protecting anything. Veronica, you were protecting your own ego from the uncomfortable truth that someone you consider beneath you had achieved something you never could. The words hung in the night air like an indictment. Around us, the harbor continued its gentle rhythm, oblivious to the human drama playing out on one small yacht among hundreds. I want you to understand something, I continued, my voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who had finally stopped caring about maintaining peace at the expense of truth. I don't need your apology. I don't need your acknowledgement. I don't need your family's acceptance or recognition. What I needed was the basic respect of being allowed to exist in spaces I created and paid for, and since you couldn't provide that, this is where our relationship ends. Veronica's face went white. What do you mean? I mean you're no longer welcome on my yacht, any of you. The 3 years of family traditions that you built on stolen credit are over. The silence that followed was profound. Nathan made a small sound of protest, but I held up a hand to stop him. You want to know what real power looks like, I said, addressing both of them but speaking to the harbor, to the night, to myself. Real power isn't inherited. It isn't borrowed. It isn't stolen from someone else's achievements. Real power is walking away from people who don't value you and never looking back. I moved toward the gangplank, my navy dress rustling in the evening breeze. Behind me, I could hear Nathan calling my name, but I didn't turn around. I had said everything that needed to be said, reclaimed everything that needed to be reclaimed. As I stepped off my yacht and onto the dock, I felt lighter than I had in years. The weight of trying to fit into someone else's narrative had finally lifted, replaced by the crystalline clarity of knowing exactly who I was and what I was worth. The harbor lights stretched out before me like a constellation of possibilities, each one representing a future where I would never again allow my achievements to be diminished, my ownership to be questioned, or my presence to be erased. I walked toward my car with the measured pace of someone who had just remembered how to take up space in the world completely, unapologetically, and on my own terms. Behind me, the yacht sat quietly at its mooring, a 40-foot testament to what one woman could achieve when she refused to accept limitations. Tomorrow, I would decide what to do with it. Tonight, it was enough to know that it was mine, had always been mine, and would remain mine regardless of who tried to claim otherwise. The truth, as it turned out, was a remarkably powerful thing. Thank you so much for listening to this story of reclaiming power and standing up for what's rightfully yours. I'd love to hear from you. Comment below and let me know where you're listening from so we can connect. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts about Camille's journey. Have you ever had to fight for recognition of your achievements? Your stories matter too.